What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another World Cup 2022 fantasy video. And in this one, it's the Matchday 1 preview. Now, I'm hoping to do one of these every single match day throughout the World Cup, go through the latest news, take some of your questions from Twitter, give you my thoughts and opinions on players and strategy and stuff like that. And this video, the Matchday 1 preview, is not necessarily any different. We are going to go through a bit of news and a bit of strategy, but it's mostly going to be revolving around the rules for the official game. Now, I tweeted out this morning that the official FIFA World Cup fantasy game is a bit of a mess. There's still players missing. Some of the rules were a bit confusing. For example, in the actual rules themselves, it says that you can change your captain once more, which kind of reads that you only get 2 captains per match day. But FIFA released an article that said you can change your captain every single day throughout a match day, which means lots more captains than just 2, especially in the group stages. So those rules were conflicting. So I tweeted out that it was a bit of a mess. I was hoping we could get some clarification. Then someone messaged me to say that they work on the game. Now, usually the official fantasy games are not necessarily run by the same people that own them, right? So the Premier League don't run FPL. I'm sure FIFA don't actually run the official fantasy game for the World Cup either. So this person says they work on the game, they've seen the confusion, they're happy to send me a document that they've been putting together to clarify and explain the rules. So of course I said, yeah, I'm happy to do that as long as I can share it, etc. So they emailed me. Now again, it wasn't from a FIFA email address, but the email address looks pretty legit. It's for a company that I looked up and that seems legit as well. And the way the email was written, if it is a troll, and this is the internet, so it definitely could be, like, they've gone to a lot of trouble to explain the rules, and then I spent like 2 hours on Twitter DMing them, trying to clarify everything that was in the email as well before I could tweet it out and answer some of your questions. So it does seem legit. They have said that those rules will be updated on the website later today, but I don't really have much more time to wait around for that to happen. So I'm going to make the video, I'm going to release it whether the rules have been updated or not, and if it does turn out to be an elaborate troll, I'll say fair play, you got me, because they really have gone to a lot of trouble, and I'll just delete the video. But it is important what they said. It is going to change how we play this game and also how we pick players too. In some ways, I feel like it's made it even more complicated than it already was, but at least we now hopefully know. So if you enjoy this video and you do find it useful, please do give it a like, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and let's try and go through these rules and explain what is happening. So I'm going to talk about captaincy first of all, but for all the rules we're going to go through, it's important to know about locked versus unlocked players, okay? So a player is unlocked when their team is yet to play in the match day. So whether or not they get any minutes in the game, whether or not they're in the squad at all, it doesn't matter. As soon as their team has played, they then become locked. So I'm going to use Harry Kane as an example quite a lot here, but he plays at 1 PM on Monday, right? And the World Cup obviously kicks off on Sunday. So he is unlocked up until the England game kicks off. At that point, he is then a locked player, and that obviously applies in the same way to everyone else as well. So when we look at captaincy, you can change captain an unlimited number of times between unlocked players. So, you know, match day 1, if I want to captain Harry Kane and the match hasn't kicked off yet for England, I can change that to someone else who also hasn't played yet if I want to. Once your captain has played, you can only change it once more to an unlocked player. Essentially, you get 2 captains per match day. So if I captain Harry Kane at 1 PM on Monday and he blanks and I'm not happy with the score, I could then change the captaincy to Lionel Messi. He's unlocked because Argentina haven't played yet. But once I've done that, I have no more captains for match day 1. You can't have a captain on Sunday, then change it to one on Monday, then to Tuesday. It's just 2 captains per match day. And the important bits at the bottom as well. You can change captain to players playing on the same calendar day. So again, going back to my Harry Kane example, if he plays at 1 PM on Monday and I'm not happy with his score and I want to captain Dumfries for Netherlands instead, who plays at 4 PM on Monday, once that England game is finished, I could then switch my captaincy to a Netherlands player instead. Then that would be my 2 captains done for the match day. Now that's good in a way because often you have to pick certain players because they're on certain days. That doesn't apply to this. The only issue is the gap to changing those captains can sometimes be quite short, so you've really got to be on your game if you want to swap it between players that are playing on the same day. But the key takeaways are 2 captains per match day. You can only change it once. Once your captain plays, you've got 1 more change. It can be on the same day if you want, but that is it then. So 2 captains per match day. So substitutes work pretty similarly to captaincy. I'm not going to go through the automatic substitute stuff because most people, if they're playing this game, they're engaged with it, they're going to be making manual substitutions anyway. So for manual substitutions, you can sub out a locked player for an unlocked one on your bench. Okay, so someone plays, they don't get the points you want, you've got players on your bench where their team haven't played yet, you can sub them in. Easy as that. You can substitute players playing on the same calendar day, but you'd need to wait until the fixture is finished. So again, going through the England example, let's say you've got Kieran Trippier in your 11 and you're not happy with the score he gets, and you've got Dumfries who's playing 3 hours later on your bench, you could then sub him in, but the window to make that substitution is going to be really small. You got to wait until the England game finishes around 3 p.m. and then also make that substitution before the Netherlands game kicks off at 4 p.m. But the possibility is there to do that. That's probably not going to matter too much in the group stage because you only get 4 substitutes, and if you've got Brazilian players and stuff like that, they're all playing on Thursday anyway, so they're going to be the ones that are on your bench. It's just something worth kind of noting when you're kind of putting your team together and managing it throughout the tournament. It might make more of a difference when we get to the later stages and there aren't as many days per match day, but that's how substitutes work. So this is where I think things start to get a little bit complicated. So try and bear with me while I explain transfers, match days and deadlines and how it all works. So before match day 1, we get our unlimited transfers. Nothing has changed in that regard. When match day 1 starts, we get 2 transfers. And the reason for that is you can make transfers during a match day. I'll come on to that in a minute. When match day 2 starts, you get 2 transfers. When match day 3 starts, you get another 2 transfers. And if you don't use them both, you can roll one over. So in match day 1, if I make 1 transfer, I can roll my other one into match day 2 if I want to, okay? As soon as match day 3 ends, we get unlimited transfers to go into the round of 16. We can change our team depending on who's gone out and who's gone through. But when that round of 16 starts, we get another 4 transfers. It's 5 for the quarters, 6 for the semi-final, and 6 for the final round as well. And what's important to note, because I don't think it's been like this for other tournaments, you'll get points for the final and the third place playoff once the semi-finals are done. So usually you get your semi-finals, you get your 4 teams, then you go into the final and you've just got the 2 teams that you get points for. But in this, it'll be all 4 teams again because of the third place playoff. Now, in terms of match days and deadlines, you can only make changes to your team within the current match day. You can view your team for the upcoming match day, but you will not be able to make any changes until the current match day has concluded. So until the final game of match day 1 is finished, I will not be able to make any changes for my match day 2 team. Match day 1 will start at the kickoff of the first game. The match day ends at 9 p.m. on the day of the final fixture. So I've actually got that written down properly here. Match day 1 starts with the kickoff of Qatar versus Ecuador on Sunday the 20th of November, 4 p.m. GMT. At this point, you unlock your 2 match day 1 transfers and will no longer be able to make unlimited free transfers to your team. Match day 1 will conclude at 9 p.m. GMT on Thursday the 24th of November, at which point the game will roll over to match day 2. Now, you can make transfers at any time, but in which match day they apply depends on whether they've played or not. Essentially, if you transfer out a player in your team during a match day, so let's just say during match day 1, and they've already played, the player you bring in will not score you any points until match day 2. But interestingly, if both players are unlocked, the new player will score points for that current match day. And the reason this is useful is for when you get team sheets. So a good example is a lot of people want one of the Netherlands keepers because they're only 4.5 million. They're quite cheap. But there's a bit of kind of discussion about who is first choice. So if you pick one of them, and then you get, and they're obviously unlocked then until Netherlands play, and before the game kicks off, you see the team sheet and it's the other goalkeeper that's in. You could transfer out the player that you picked, the wrong goalkeeper who is still unlocked, and you can transfer them to the other goalkeeper that's still unlocked up until kickoff, and that new goalkeeper will get points for your match day 1 side. So that's the difference. If they're locked, i.e. they've already played, the new player will not be available to you until the next match day. But if they haven't, then you can react to team sheets and you can change them for someone else that hasn't played. Obviously, you can't go from the Netherlands keeper who plays at 4 o'clock on Monday to the England keeper who's already played. It's got to be for another unlocked player, but that is possible. And that's kind of handy, especially when you get into maybe match day 3 where some teams are through the groups and it might be slightly different setups. You could take a punt on Trossard, for example, and if you see that Eden Hazard is lining up, you can remove Trossard for someone else who's in and around that price. So that's where you can use it. You will unlock your match day 2 transfer allocation notifications, obviously, once match day 2 starts, and you can start setting up your team for the next match day. So as soon as match day 1 concludes, you'll get your 2 transfers for match day 2. So it's not a case that you can only make transfers during, the match is actually being played. It just gives you the option. Okay, so at 9 p.m. GMT on Thursday, the 24th of November, match day 1 ends, match day 2 starts. And if you want to use your 2 transfers to set up before any games are kicked off, you can do that. If you want to wait until later into that match day to see some of the team sheets, you can do that as well. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so the wildcard booster, if it works how it was explained to me, it might be one of the most ridiculous chips I've ever seen in a fantasy game. When I got the rules emailed to me, the clarifications, I went back and forth in DMs just to get extra clarity, to make sure I fully understood. And one of the things that I went back and forth on the most was the wildcard, because I couldn't quite believe it worked how this person was telling me it worked, right? So we'll wait and see if the rules get updated. If they do to what this person has told me, then I'll know they're a legit person and that what they've said about the wildcard is probably true, right? So wildcard can be activated once a match day ends. It will be active up until the next match day starts. So using match day 1 and 2 as an example, match day 1 will end at 9 p.m. on Thursday the 24th of November, and at that point match day 2 starts. You can activate your wildcard, you can change your team for match day 2, happy days. But the thing is, match day 2 doesn't end until after the final game of that match day. So the wildcard is active throughout. So potentially, you could set your team up how you want, but you could also wait for the lineups. And if there's a player that you were expecting to play that isn't, you could transfer them out for another unlocked player to get their points, right? And you can do that an unlimited amount of times in the match day that you use your wildcard. So that already sounds pretty good. A lot of people were thinking about using it in match day 3 so that, the group stages, some teams might have won, there might have been a bit more rotation and they could react to that, as well as having a brand new squad for match day 3. But it actually gets even more ridiculous than that, okay? So this is the example that I came up with. Match day 1 ends. You activate your wildcard for match day 2. You overhaul your team and you make it set up really nicely for match day 2. You pick that team. Once the final game of match day 2 starts, all players will be locked, right? Because they'll either have already played or be in teams that have played, or they'll be in that final game. But although they're all locked, the wildcard is still active because that final game hasn't finished yet. So you could then transfer out all your locked players for other players, and they would be active in match day 3. If you remember how transfers work, back from what I already talked about, if you transfer an unlocked player for another unlocked player, you get that new player's points in that match day. But if you transfer out a locked player that's already played for a new player, that player won't be in your team until match day 3. Now, I couldn't believe this, and I went back and I gave this exact example, and they said that is how it would work. I could activate my wildcard straight after match day 1, get my team for match day 2, and then once the final game is kicked off and all players are then locked, you can transfer them out and you can have those players in match day 3. So the example I gave was I'd have Lionel Messi in my team for match day 2, but not Mbappe. And then once that final game's kicked off and Messi is locked, I transfer him to Mbappe. I still get Messi's points, not Mbappe's for match day 2. But would Mbappe be in my team for match day 3? And they said yes. I know what you're thinking, Andy, you are crazy. And I completely agree. It doesn't sound legit at all. So I'm going to wait and I'm not going to release this video until after the rules are updated. And at that point, if all the rules match what this person has said, I can only assume this is how the wildcard is going to work. And that would mean that it's probably best used in match day 2. Because if you use it in match day 3, you can react to the lineups, but getting the unlimited transfers for the next match day won't matter because we all get unlimited transfers either way for the round of 16. So I think you've got to use it then in match day 2 or the quarterfinals, because then you can do the same thing, right? You set up your team for the quarterfinals, you wait and see who gets knocked out, but before the final game finishes, you swap all your players to different semi-final players. So it sounds crazy. I still don't believe it. I won't even believe it if it's written in the rules, but apparently that's how it works. And if that's the case, I think it's got to be used in match day 2. That seems like the best time for me. So Power Captain and 12th Man haven't actually changed. I just wanted to talk about where I will probably use these boosters in the tournament. Now, originally I thought I'd use them both in the group stages for all the reasons I've said before, that you've got the most amount of weaker teams. Generally, as you get through the knockout stages, the better teams will remain. There's less chances probably of braces and hat-tricks and stuff like that. You're more likely to get them in the group stages. Doesn't mean it'll definitely work like that. It's just what's more likely. So 12th Man, I will definitely use in the group stages. I'll just go for a heavy hitter player that I don't own, and that's who I will choose. Who you choose will depend on what team you put together, right? So for match day 1, for example, I might go for Kane, Neymar and Messi, but I also want Mbappe, so I use my 12th man on that heavy hitter. Bear in mind you can't captain that 12th man, so if you think that Neymar, Messi, Mbappe and Kane are the 4 best captains in match day 1, you might think differently. Whichever 2 you're going to captain should not be the one you use the 12th man on, right? You just use it on one of the other 2. So I'll definitely use that in the group stage. I don't see any benefit for saving that until the later rounds. Power captain's a little bit different because for every match day, you're going to get 2 captain changes, but in the group stages you're more likely to nail a good captain from one of your 2 picks. Obviously, as you get to the semi-finals and the final and stuff like that, you've likely got 2 really good teams up against each other. It could be tight. There could be a random player that gets a big haul, right? Scores a goal from outside the box, gets an assist somewhere as well. You weren't expecting them to do anything, so you haven't captained them. The power captain can help you with that. Now, a lot of people were saying that you should use it in the final because there's no captain change, but now we know you're going to get 3rd place playoff and the final. That's not quite the same. You're still going to get to change your captain. But I do think that, I don't know, it's a difficult one. I'm not fully sure about it because I guess in the group stage I've got lots of players that have got a good chance of getting a score and therefore I don't want to miss it. But on the flip side, I've also got a pretty good chance of nailing somewhat of a decent score where maybe that doesn't happen in the latter stages. So I'm not sure right now. Originally, I was on group stages, but I think I'm going to save it until the knockout rounds and just hope with my captain switches throughout the group stages that I can just nail someone with a really kind of good score. So 12th man definitely in the group stages. You could put power captain until one of the latter rounds instead if you wanted to. So I should probably answer some questions as well. I'll try and go through these as quick as possible. So what do you think of the potential of players like Alphonso Davies for a weak team like Canada? Now, he's listed as defender. If we go over to the World Cup screen, he's listed as defender at 5 million, but he is likely to play further forward. And we do like out of position defenders, so I don't really mind him as a pick at all. But what I would say is, it feels unlikely he's getting a clean sheet in either of the first 2 games against Belgium and Croatia, maybe against Morocco. So then it depends on what kind of chip strategy you go for. If the wild card works like I've explained, then you probably wouldn't put him on a match day 1 squad or a match day 2, but maybe he goes into match day 3, depending on how he's kind of performed in the earlier stage of the tournament and how Canada are doing. But if you look at the other kind of attacking defenders for that price, you can get Theo Hernandez for France for 5 million, Trippier for 5 million. They're quite attacking as well. Maybe not quite as much as Alphonso Davies will be for Canada, but they play in better teams that are going to get more chances and have higher chance of getting clean sheets as well. So I don't mind him as a punt whatsoever. I like, in fantasy games, getting defenders that are going to play out of position, but I don't think he's really that great of an option for the first 2 match days. Alright, so is Di Maria nailed for Argentina? And if so, is he a good pick? He could be really good value for that price. So again, as always, correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below, but I'm fairly certain he's nailed, right? Obviously, if it gets to a point where they're through the group stages and they decide to rest some players, he might get rested, but I think we're going to see him start most of the games. 8.5 million is a pretty good price. And I think people are quite high on Argentina in general, especially in the group stages, because they do have pretty good fixtures. So Saudi Arabia match day 1, Mexico match day 2 and Poland in match day 3. I think most of us are expecting goals in all of those games. So again, it's going to come down to kind of chip strategy, but if you are someone that's going to wildcard in match day 2 or 3 anyway, I wouldn't mind getting 1 or 2, if not 3 players for Argentina for the Saudi Arabia game. Mexico should be decent as well. I think they're going to do pretty decent, right? They're going to do decent in general. So I quite like him as a pick at 8.5 million. If we go to kind of all midfielders in and around that price, he is one of the more expensive players, by the way. Only Sané, Bruno Fernandes and De Bruyne, I think, and Bernardo Silva, sorry, are more expensive. You've got like Frankie de Jong. I don't know about him as a fantasy option. Obviously, he's a great player. Phil Foden, probably not guaranteed to play, although there are rumours that he is going to start, so we'll have to wait and see. Anthony, again, I don't know if he would start. Valverde could be okay. I guess the point I'm trying to make is if you've got 8.5 million, he should be a pretty good pick. Luka Modric, I think he's on penalties. I don't know how attacking he'll be in this tournament. We'll have to wait and see. He might sit a bit deeper. But I think when you look at if you've got 8.5 million to spend, he does seem like one of the better picks. Like Maddison is 8 million. He could even be injured and not play. They're managing his workload at the moment. Saka 8 million. He's not guaranteed to play either. So I think for 8.5 million, he's a decent pick. I think Argentina are going to do well, and they got good fixtures. So yeah, I think he could be good value for his price. Alright, so what do I think about Kevin De Bruyne versus a premium forward? Now, I actually kind of really like Kevin De Bruyne as an option in this game, but at the same time, I don't think he's made it into any of the drafts that I've had so far. So that kind of tells me I don't rate him that highly versus a premium forward. I guess you've got to think about it as both combinations and also captaincy options as well. So if I look at this squad, for example, and don't worry, this isn't my final team or anything like that. I've got Harry Kane, who's 11 million, same price as De Bruyne, and I've got Perisic at 7.5 million. So if I take Perisic and Kane out instead, I could go to all midfielders, Kevin De Bruyne, and then I've still got 7.5 million to spend on a forward. So if I put that down to affordable, you've got like Richarlison, you know, Dolberg, Rashford. I mean, most of these 7.5 million forwards are not necessarily going to play, or they're not players that I want to have in my team. Don't get me wrong, Richarlison could be a great option if he plays up front for Brazil, and he would be the one that I would probably go for. But that's what you've kind of got to weigh up. Kevin De Bruyne versus Harry Kane, it's not just that in isolation. It's Kevin De Bruyne and Richarlison versus Perisic and Harry Kane. Now, you might say that if Richarlison plays, the De Bruyne combination is better, especially if you're happy captaining other players. So in my team right now, I've got Messi and Neymar. They could just be my two captains, in which case it's perfectly okay to have De Bruyne instead. So I think he's a really nice option. I think with the likes of Messi and I think Neymar and definitely Harry Kane, you get penalties as well. You don't necessarily get that with De Bruyne. Now, he's an interesting one because I think if you ask people who's going to take penalties for Belgium, especially if Lukaku's not fit, most people will say De Bruyne because he's just so good, right? He can do everything. But when you look at Man City, he never really fancies taking penalties. It's been a long time since he took them. And if you wanted them, he could definitely have them. Maybe not with Haaland around, but before that. So I think if you look at that Belgian team, if Hazard is playing, he could take them. Tielemans takes them as kind of backup for Leicester when Jamie Vardy's not playing as well. So it's not guaranteed. Whereas with a lot of the premium forwards, you do get penalties as well. And if I'm going to captain someone, I do like captaining a penalty taker if I can. So, yeah, it all comes down to combinations and captaincy. If I look at this team and I'm happy that Messi and Neymar are going to be my two captains, I do think that De Bruyne and Richarlison could be better than Kane and Perisic, but it is pretty close. So I like him, but in isolation, I think I prefer the forward. So then it's going to come down to how much money have you got to spend on that other spot. So there we go, that is the Matchday 1 preview. I wasn't expecting it to go like that, but that is how things changed when I got that email this morning. I hope it was correct, otherwise I've wasted a lot of time today and I have been properly trolled. I spent like 2 hours just going through the email and going back and forth to clarify everything, obviously then recording the video. So hopefully it's good. If you have enjoyed it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I will have my team selection for Matchday 1 out tomorrow as well. That will probably be it for videos until Matchday 1 is started, and obviously we'll start looking ahead to Matchday 2 as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed this very short kind of pre-tournament time. If you've enjoyed this one, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you again soon. And just thinking there, you may not even ever see this video if the rules aren't updated. So hopefully they are. Otherwise that really is like a whole day wasted.